I want to talk about the bear today. Let's look at its stats first. The bear has 300,000 health, 700 def and 60 res. Especially with collectibles, it's easier to bypass 700 def than 60 res, so physical tends to work better here than art damage. The bear attacks 2 targets at once for 800 physical damage, so it's a good idea that the last 2 deployed operators are something tanky enough to withstand that. All of these stats are scaled up by hard mode cursed relics. The bear is the only enemy in the stage you actually have to kill. All the other enemies are like slugs from OD and they don't count towards ending the stage. The bear has 2 abilities. First, the shield. After the first 45 seconds of the fight, the bear starts using that shield. It equals 15% of its maximum health. When the shield is activated, enemies gain a large movement speed buff. The shield has no duration, and if you don't break it in time, it's just going to refresh its HP. While the shield is active, the bear would not use its normal attack, but it will still use its other ability, which we will call the counter attack. This skill is active from the start of the fight. When the bear is attacked 20 times, it releases an explosion that hits every operator for 150% of its attack in art damage. The counter has no cooldown, so using high hit count operators like Exia or Great Road is very dangerous. However, since the explosion is art damage, Nightingale can mitigate it very easily. The bear also has a health regeneration, unlike most other enemies in the game, for about 0.5% of its max health per second, but this can be disabled if you finish its questline and get the suicide note. I don't think this item is critical for actually killing the bear. All the 3 replays I'm using as background footage here did not make use of the suicide note. It only really matters if you take a really long time to kill the bear. Because the stage is essentially a big stat check, there's only 3 ways to approach it, regardless of what operators you actually bring. 1, you all-in the boss with everything you have. Basically, you just drop all of your damage and try to kill it as fast as possible. With enough damage, it's possible to kill it before any other enemies even spawn. This requires a bunch of items, but if you have it, it's by far the easiest way to deal with the boss. Just end the stage as quickly as possible. You can go for a safer strategy instead, where you actually use some of your operators to deal with the normal enemies. That way you kill the boss slower, but it has a few advantages. 1, you don't need as much damage because there's less of a rush to kill the boss. 2, you don't take as much art explosions into the face because less operators are hitting the boss with this kind of strategy. It does take longer to kill the boss, so you have to actually pay attention to the enemies, but if you set up on the lanes properly, the enemies aren't all that scary and can be handled fairly easily. There is also a third tactic you can use. It is possible to simply ignore the boss for about 5 minutes. This has one big benefit. If you ignore the boss and he shields himself, he will stop attacking entirely. The defensive counter will not proc, so he will not do any damage to your operators. At that point, you only need to deal with the enemies that spawn, which with your whole squad devoted to it is extremely easy. Once 5 minutes have passed, the boss will proceed to kill itself and do 200% of its attack in art damage to all of your operators. This can be fairly dangerous because it is 1600 damage in normal mode, so it will likely kill a bunch of medics, but melee operators should be able to tank that just fine. After that, you lose 30 lives and you just need to clean up the remaining mobs. The only hard part about this strategy is actually setting up a set 30 life. The easiest way to do this is to get the 4 temporary lives code power at the start, so you can avoid any random leaks, and then just gather leaks from every encounter you can. You should be able to add up to over 30 lives on most of your runs if you do that. That's all I have to say about the fight. Thanks for listening.